Hello, and welcome to Open Line. I'm your host, Starlene Stringer. Well, it's a new decade, and that means it's time for a new census. Take a look.
What is the 2020 census? Every 10 years, the census records everyone living in this country. It's written in the Constitution and comes in a questionnaire that counts everyone who lives at your address on April 1st. The data can be used to inform funding for services like fire stations, schools, clinics, and representation that affect your community. Shape your future. Start here. Visit 2020census.gov.
Beginning March 12th, people across the country will receive their census questionnaire, and many people have questions of their own about the process. Today, we'll talk with the experts about what to expect and why the census is so important. Joining me are Jason Simon and Jumana Al-Khatib with the Irving 2020 Census Complete Count Committee, and Nancy Guerrero with the Dallas Regional Census Center. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
You're so welcome. And we're going to start with you, Jason, just getting straight to the basics. Just tell us, what exactly is the census and why is it so important?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having us here today to talk about this important issue. Simply put, the census is a head count of everyone in the United States. That's been done every year for every 10 years. The census has been done in the United States since 1790. It's required by the Constitution, and it's critical that we have a complete count, an accurate count, to determine up to $675 billion a year in federal funding. So that we've got that much money at stake to come to cities like Irving, the state, and other local communities. So it's really important that the census is done accurately. Those funds go to support important services such as emergency services, transportation, our roads, our hospitals, our housing programs in the city of Irving. So it's, again, critical that we work hard on the census, make sure we have an accurate count, and that's why we do it every year. It also determines congressional representation. So the census will determine, due to our population growth in Texas, we stand to gain up to 3 new congressional districts in Texas. And so the census, an accurate census count, will have a big impact on our congressional representation, who we send to Congress to represent us here in Irving.
Interesting. And Nancy, what would you like to add to that?
I wanted to add that it's very important that for the community to understand and know that everyone counts. Everyone living in the United States of America has to be counted, and it is the most, so we can distribute equally the money and the representation, as Jason said. So we need to make sure that everyone is counted for them to feel confident answering the census. It is confidential, protected by law. We have to sworn for life that we will not share any information that will identify a person. We share data and statistics with everyone, but we will not share anything that will identify a person. So we take that seriously, and we want the community to know that we will not share any other information that will identify them with no other governmental agency. So it is only data and statistics, and for them to feel confident and answer the census, we need to count everyone once, only once, and at the right place.
I'm glad you answered that, because there's probably a lot of people wondering if it is private, the information they choose to share. So thank you for letting them know that it is. Jason, I want to come back to you because I know that you and Jumana are part of the Irving 2020 Census Complete Count Committee. Sure. What is the purpose of the committee?
So the Complete Count Committee is a committee made up of volunteers, Irving residents. The members are appointed by the Irving City Council. And the purpose of the committee is really to assist the Census Bureau in outreach and really focus on the hard to count areas in Irving. So there are areas that are determined, that are deemed hard to count in Irving. Those include the immigrant population, young children from 0 to 5, and then apartment residents. So we want to, our committee is really there to help outreach in those specific areas, to work to get out in the community, to educate folks about the census, to promote the census, to talk about getting a complete count in Irving. And so we've been involved in dozens of community outreach events throughout the city. We've met monthly since April of 2019. We've worked to get information out through the City Spectrum, through ICTN, The water bill, every Irving resident, we've been putting a Census 2020 message in every resident's water bill since June of 2019. So we're really working to get the word out. We're also going to be working on a yard sign campaign to get signs out in Irving to make folks aware when they're driving through Irving, to make folks aware that the census is here and it's time for everyone to participate and be counted. So the committee's very active. We've got 4 subcommittees, one that focuses on education, one that focuses on working with the media and communications, one that focuses on apartment and neighborhood group outreach, and then we've got another group that helps us with the faith community and some of the community leaders. So getting the word out in the faith community and making sure that just everyone's counted and that Irving is represented.
Sounds like y'all are very busy. And so, Jumana, I have to ask, why is your work with the committee so important? Y'all have been very busy already.
We have. I have to say there is a lot of dynamics that take place in the city of Irving, right? And our number one goal is to communicate to Irving residents that it is really crucial. It is very important for everyone to respond to the census. What we are trying to communicate to all sectors inside the city is to tell everyone and every household and every person to tell them how being counted means a lot to you, how that if we are not counted as a community, we lose a big share of our funding and our political representation, as Jason mentioned. In terms of funding, when we talk about distributing more than $675 billion in federal funds, this is what gets translated for our city into services. We're talking SNAP, we're talking education, transportation, disaster recovery. So these are the things that we're gonna help us benefit from that federal funding. Now, talking about governmental representation, we want Irving residents to be represented on the political aspect by responding to the census. Really, the residents would be sending a message that we do exist, we want to be included, we want to be represented. Sometimes, like if we do not feel like the governmental services 100% fulfills our needs, or our reps do not 100% fulfill our needs, then that's the chance for us to contribute to that and to make it even better. So we're basically trying to practice our rights, our freedoms, showing that we are part of this nation. We really wanna be part of everything that is done. Another important thing I have to say for Irving in specific is that if you look at the businesses, whether it be as Jason said, faith-based organizations, and that's one of our subcommittees, or private. Let's talk first about nonprofit and faith-based. If they want to go, say, look for grants that would help them in funding, the data for them that's going to help them in trying to locate good grants for them all come from the census. Another thing now, if we talk about private businesses, and Irving is really rich, its business environment is really amazing. So now these businesses, where do you think they're gonna get the data that tells them what customers to go after, what locations to go open their businesses at? So it's really the census is what drags everything the residents do.
Everyone wants to be counted and needs to be counted. And just looking at our setup today, you can see it's a very diverse set. We are all different, but at the same time, we all need to be counted, and that's what the whole world is, you know? And so the country in particular is what we're worried about right now, making sure that everyone does get accounted for. I want to come to you, Nancy, and talk to you for just a minute about the questionnaire itself, because a lot of people are describing it as short. How short is it?
It is short. It's only 10 questions, and it's only name, address, phone number, how many people live in the home, the relationship that you have with the others that you're including in the census, race, ethnicity, and sex, and that's all we ask in the questionnaire. It is a short form. We do other surveys that are longer, but the census, the decennial census, that is to count everyone, it is only 10 questions.
Now-
and the most important thing to mention, I'm sorry,
That's okay, go
is
ahead.
that we don't ask for immigration status.
Okay.
We don't ask for social security number, and we do not ask for bank information. So
Okay.
if anyone is calling them asking for any of that information, it's not the census.
That's
We
right.
only ask for name, address, phone number, the race, ethnicity, how many people live in the home, if you're renting and owning. That's all we ask, because we want to make sure that we count everyone, and this is just a count of everyone living in the United States of America. So that's why it's important, and it's a short.
Now, I'm glad you said again, it's short, it's 10 questions, and you answered that for people that may say, hey, I get a call, someone wants to know my bank account. Don't give them your bank
No.
account number, that's not good. But when you talk about it being 10 questions, has it always been that short, or is this a change?
It is, no. Also in 2010, I worked at 2010 Census, and it was also 10 questions because it is the count of the population. So we concentrate only on the count, how many people live in the United States, where are they living, so we can distribute the funds and the political representation. So that's the most important thing. And in 2010 was 10 questions as well as 2020.
Okay.
So it is a short. We do have the American Community Survey that we do on a yearly basis, but that's a long form, and it's only a percentage of the community that receives that one. And that's why it's kind of like a little confusing. But the decennial census, the one that everyone has to be included, and the one that we want everyone to answer, because you count, we count, all of us count.
That's right.
It's only 10 questions, it's easy. And when you move to the second person and on, it is even shorter, because you're not asking the address again, you're not asking how many people live there. So it is even shorter when you move from person number 2 and on. And they can do it online and by phone, and online and by phone they can include up to 99 persons in the survey.
Oh, wow.
So we want to make sure that everyone understands the importance of the census, the importance of counting everyone, include their children, include their senior citizens. If there's 2 families living in one particular address, we want to make sure that both of the families are included. So it is super important, it is crucial that everyone understands that.
Wonderful, thank you. And so Jason, what happens with that information that's collected?
So that information, again, is used to determine these decisions that are made in terms of federal funding, representation. So that information is something that, again, is critically important to Irving. So we want to make sure we get that complete count. So that information, again, is just used to determine funding for cities like Irving, and that's really what we're focused on, is making sure that Irving is represented and that we are not undercounted. There's some statistics that show even a 1% undercount could cost the state of Texas $300 million annually. So
Wow.
you could see that on the large scale of the state of Texas, but coming down to Irving, you know, it would be a big impact on Irving, a negative impact if we're undercounted,
For sure.
if these populations that we're trying to reach out to in Irving through the Complete Count Committee are not counted. So.
Okay. Well, speaking of being counted, I want to come back to you for a minute, Nancy, because you kind of touched on this a bit, but there's a difference in the way people can respond to the questionnaire this time, right?
Yes, definitely. The difference between the 2010 census and the 2020 census is, for the very first time in history, they can do it online or by phone, by mail, or in person. And it used to be done, it's done since 1790, so we've done 23 censuses before, and all of them were like door to door or by mail. This time we're giving the opportunity to everyone to respond on their own, to respond on in their home, feeling comfortable, to give all the information. They can answer the questionnaire online. They can just make a phone call. It will be like 5 to 10 minutes, and they're done with the census. That way we will not go knocking on the doors. So if they answer the census in their own, on the website or by phone, we will not knock on the doors, and they don't have to open the door to no one.
Well, see, even with everything y'all have said already, there are going to be people that say, well, I don't need to respond. But Jumana, why does everyone need to respond to the census questionnaire here in Irving?
Because as we said, it is really telling everyone that we are here. We are part of what everybody does. We want to be served, and at the same time we want to serve. This is how we contribute. It's, if you think about it, it is sending a message that we demand to be seen. We expect that the government is working for us, and this is how we want to work together. Let's say, let's put it that way.
Yeah, and Jason, what would you like to add to that? I see you nodding.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's you know, since, like Nancy said, we've done it since 1790. It's required by the Constitution. It's really just important for our government, for our democracy, that we all participate and make sure that our communities are represented. So We're really focused on that. I know with the Complete Count Committee, and we're looking forward to a complete count and really hoping that everyone responds initially. And that will actually save taxpayer dollars if you respond initially, and then the census folks do not have to go out and do the canvassing and knocking on doors for the follow-up. So we're really hoping we can get it done the first time and get it done right. And
it would be great if everyone participates,
Sure.
but Jumana, there are going to be some groups that are underrepresented, right?
Yes, yes. The Bureau told us that in the past, some minorities and undercounted groups or communities were not represented well in the census. This basically, when we talk about that, we're talking about, number one, I would say non-English speakers. They might be missed, and this year I guess we're really doing a lot, and we can talk more in details about that later, how we are really targeting these undercounted communities. So non-English speakers is one. Another group would be those newcomers who have just came to the country. They are not used to the system yet. They do not, maybe they get it in the mail, but they think they don't comprehend what it is really. That's another thing. When we also talk about undercounted communities, I think we talk about those who are struggling, those who live at a living standard that is below the level of being comfortable or luxurious enough to give it the time or to pay attention to it. That's one example. Now, in terms of housing, since we are counting the households wherever we go, there are a lot of families, a lot of people who would be in a transitional stage in their housing arrangements. So you will find sometimes two families, for example, in the same household. These would have concerns that, like, we don't want to say that we all live in that house or in that apartment. So these are some of their concerns, which, as Nancy mentioned, we do stress and mention to everyone that the information shared is not going to be shared or taken by the Census Bureau to any other entity, whether it be immigration, whether it be apartment complex owners.
Sure. I'm glad you brought that up, because there are concerns by people, surely, that that the information they share will not be confidential. And with that in mind, we would like to share a PSA that truly shows you what will happen with the information that you share and the safety of the data that's collected.
Is my 2020 census data safe? After sending your census response, your personal information is kept safe. By law, it can't be shared with any other government agency, law enforcement, or landlord. No one. So take your 2020 census with peace of mind. Shape your future. Start here. Visit 2020census.gov.
All right, so I want to come back to you, Nancy. As people can see from that PSA, the census is really placing a high priority on the data security. So how are people's responses kept private?
We are Title 13, so we protect the information. It is confidential and protected by law. So employees of the census have to sworn for life that we will not share any information that will identify a person. So we are a data and statistics organization, department of the government, and that's what we do, collect information, but it's only data and statistics that we share with everyone. But anything that will identify a person, it is confidential and protected by law. So if we share any information that will identify a person, we can go to jail for 5 years or pay a fine of $250,000. So we take the privacy of the information and protect it seriously.
It definitely sounds like it, and I'm sure that's making a lot of people feel a lot better about wanting to participate in the census questionnaire this year. Jumana, I want to come back to you for a minute, because you were talking about whether or not people had an immigration status concern or whatever that may be for them that's keeping them from wanting to fill out the questionnaire. How does immigration status affect whether a person should respond?
So that's another reason why some groups are not going to participate. They're afraid it's going to ask about citizenship. This is when we come and tell them there is no question about citizenship in the census. So the question has been removed. No one is going to ask whether are you a citizen or not. So this is not something to be concerned about in this census in 2020 now. And I think it should be really encouraging everyone to just list their information without worrying about that.
Thank you. Now, Jason, with so much at stake, you kind of touched on this before. Your committee is busy doing many things to get the word out about being counted during the census. And so can you tell us again, what are you doing so that people are aware it's coming and to get ready for it?
We're doing a lot. We're out in the community constantly, as much as possible. Any events that we can identify in the city where we can have a booth set up to talk about the census, really educating folks on how important it is and kind of dispelling some of the myths that may be out there. So a lot of community activities, a lot of outreach that way, distributing materials. We're working with Dallas County. Dallas County has a census effort going. Irving is very actively involved in that effort, so we're working with that county-wide effort, trying to get the word out. There's some folks going door to door. There's some folks on an education campaign. We're getting signs out in the community, so we're just trying to do as much as we can, as quickly as we can, to make sure everybody's aware and that the census is coming. And then once it's here, they understand why it's important and why they need to participate as it really will shape the future of Irving for the next 10 years or more.
Sure. So the committee and the Dallas Census Bureau have really partnered with many organizations throughout the community and civic groups too to get the word out. So Jumana, I want to come to you next and ask, how have you partnered with Irving schools in particular?
As part of the subcommittees that Jason touched on earlier, we thought that we should have just one subcommittee that is dedicated and devoted to schools and education in Irving. And that's what I'm focusing on the education subcommittee, where we are really trying to cover all aspects of all schooling options. Wherever there are students in Irving is where we want to reach out to them. Now, we are getting a lot of help from the Census Bureau, as the Bureau has hired and partnered with a number of partnership specialists who are hired just for the education sector. So we get a lot of help from them, honestly, in trying to reach out to the different types of educational institutes. For example, we are targeting on the public schooling side all three different ISDs in the city of Irving: Capel, Irving ISD, and Carrollton Farmers Branch. We are talking and communicating and doing a lot of activities with all three ISDs in order to have the awareness go to the level of the student, even inside the classroom. And the events that the schools are holding for the parents, for everyone, is just to educate people in the school communities about the census. We also did not forget about other types of schools. We went to charter schools, we went to private schools. We also thought about those students who are homeschooled. We tried to partner with the libraries in Irving, trying to reach out to all types of students. One big help of the partnership specialists that we got was for students in the community colleges. So we have North Lake College in Irving, and we really reached out to them and tried to arrange for some different methodologies and arrangements to reach out to the students in there. A lot of the students live in a mileage. Those like North Lake College students, they are in the area. They are our people that we want to reach out to. So that's also another.
Wonderful. And speaking of other groups, I want to come back to you, Jason, because what about apartments and neighborhood groups? Are you reaching out to them too?
We are, actually. So I work at the Apartment Association of Greater Dallas, which is a trade organization that represents owners and managers of rental property, and the majority of apartment communities in Irving are members of the Apartment Association. So we've used those relationships through the association to reach out to the apartment communities in Irving. It's one of our hard-to-count populations. It's a very important population to focus on. Irving is a majority renter city, so we're reaching out to the apartment communities to get the word out with putting up posters at the apartments, getting signs out, just so that the managers can inform their residents about the census and the importance of responding. So we have a subcommittee that's really dedicated to the apartment communities, as well as the neighborhood associations, Las Colinas Association, many others, to get the word out to those folks as well. So it's a pretty broad effort to get that message out.
Sounds like it. And what about the immigrant population, Jumana? How are you reaching out to them?
We actually did more than one thing in that area. Number one is that we thought about what would be some outlets or points of contact with these. So throughout, faith-based organizations is one thing. We have a subcommittee that handles faith-based organizations, that's one thing, and other nonprofits that provide services to these immigrants. Another thing that we did is that, for those, as we said, who don't have English as their first language, or who don't even speak English, we did two things. The first thing is that we have invested an amount of the funds that we have here inside the city into printing some of the material to be distributed in terms of flyers and stuff into these languages that we know are really well spoken in our city. We are trying to communicate with them with their own language. Anybody in our CCC who speaks a certain language, we tell them, hey, we want to go take us to a certain event, to something. We want to be part of that. We want to really talk to everyone in their own language. Now, the other thing that is really helpful, and that I think this year it's going to be so important, is that when anybody is going to respond to the survey, if they do it over the phone, so there are more than, I heard, 59 different languages that are going to be, and those who are doing it online as well. Sorry, but I'm really, I like how the amount of options is really big. I heard there are 13 languages for those who want to do it online.
Oh, wow, that's very impressive. So thank you all for having that available so that everyone can participate. And speaking of having available, I know that there are many jobs available too, or at least there were. So Nancy, are there still jobs available to help?
Yes, definitely. It's a huge task that we had in front of us, and we want to make sure that we include everyone and count everyone in Irving. So yes, we do have still jobs available. They can go to the website, 2020census.gov/jobs, and they can still apply for it. It is for the follow-up, for the non-response follow-up that we do, and it's from May to July. So we still have jobs available, and it is very competitive salaries. So it starts at $20 an hour and very flexible. So
People
they
are
can
like,
just
what?
apply.
They're listening now. They're like, yes, right?
Yeah, so they can still apply. They can also send a text to 3131, and on the message put Texas jobs, and they will get a link, and they can apply from there. So it is easy. We're making it easy for everyone to apply, and we are encouraging bilingual people to apply because it is a huge need in the communities. And just to mention, on the website and on the phone, there's 12 languages available besides English. So those are immediately available when they go on the website or call on the phone. And the 59 languages, it is guides that we have for people to look for them on the website, on the Census 2020 census.gov, and all those are guides to help them identify any problems that they might have or any questions, answer any questions they may have.
Wonderful. We are just about out of time, but now we have to know, like, when should we expect to see these questionnaires? Give us the quick timeline.
March 12. So it's here. We're almost here. The website and the phone numbers are going to be open on March 12. Everyone should receive the first invitation. It is an invitation to respond to the census, and they should receive it around the 12. And we will send a second notice to every household. 95% of the households dwellings in the United States of America will receive the first and second invitation. We remind them, and so they can do it, to remind them to do it online or by phone. And then after that, we send a 4 reminder, and on the 4 reminder, we send the questionnaire in case they want to do it by mail. So the first invitations are to invite them to answer online or by phone.
Thank you so much.
So on the 4 one, they receive the questionnaire, and then we go door by door.
We're excited, we're pumped up, we're motivated. Thank you. And Jason, one more word for the audience watching right now to encourage them to go vote. I'm trying to get you. You're like, vote. I just wanted to tease you. See? Okay, no. That's what it feels like, right?
Sure,
like
sure.
This is your opportunity
this is your
to
time.
speak up.
Speak up, be counted for Irving. It's critical for our future.
Awesome. So, It is definitely critical. Thank you all so much for being here. And thank you for joining us. I'm Starlene Stringer. Please be sure to join us for the next edition of Open Line. We'll see you then.